So by doing those three things, we're going to become fluent much faster, and it's going to be a much more fun and engaging process along the way. We're going to be going over the 3 M's. And those 3 M's are going to be mindset, motivation, and methodology. And so we might be thinking, well, I came here to learn sign language. What does mindset, motivation, and methodology have anything to do with it? Well, it has a lot to do with it. And if we can really master those 3 M's, then we're going to make the entire language learning process much more easy, much more engaging, and much more successful in the long run. In fact, I wanted to share this quote with you really quick. It's from Abraham Lincoln. And he says, "If I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be focusing on sharpening the axe by concentrating on the 3 M's: mindset, motivation, and methodology. And so let's go ahead and dive right into mindset, because that's going to be really the biggest unlock for, I think, a lot of us. So you might, again, be telling yourself, well, what does mindset have to do with learning in the language? And really, it can mean a lot. And it can mean the difference between us successfully learning the language or us attempting and failing at learning the language. And I'll show you really quick what I mean. So bear with me. I'm going to show you a poem. And you might be thinking, well, what does this have to do with anything? And it's just going to be a demonstration of the power of what the mindset can really unlock. And so I'll go ahead and read this to you, and we're going to read it from top to bottom. It says, "Today was the absolute worst day ever." We're already to a bad start, right? Yikes. And don't try to convince me that there's something good in every day, because when you take a closer look, this world is a pretty evil place. Even if some goodness does shine through once in a while, satisfaction and happiness don't last. And it's not true that it's all in the mind and heart, because true happiness can be attained only if one's surroundings are good. It's not true that good exists. I'm sure you can agree that the reality creates my attitude. It's all beyond my control, and you'll never in a million years hear me say that today was a good day. Yikes. That was really negative, right? Today was the worst day ever. And this can be how we approach language learning. And if we go into it with the wrong mindset, we're going to think, wow, this is hard. I'm having a bad day. This is difficult. I can't do it. You know what? Forget it. However, if we change our mindset, we can actually flip that entire paradigm and make that a much more positive experience. Let me show you. Let's go back to that same poem, and we're going to read it a little differently. Now we're going to read it from the bottom up. And you can let me know if you've ever come across this before. So from the bottom up. "Today was a good day, and you'll never in a million years hear me say that it's all beyond my control. My attitude creates the reality. I'm sure you can agree that it's not true that good exists only if one's surroundings are good. True happiness can be obtained because it's all in the mind and heart. And it's not true that satisfaction and happiness don't last. Some goodness does shine through once in a while, even if this world is a pretty evil place. Because when you take a closer look, there's something good in every day. And don't try to convince me that today was the absolute worst day ever." Wow, same words, but we just read it differently. And in many cases, language learning can be very much the same. It can be a very similar experience, and the language is there. The language itself doesn't really change that much, but our approach to learning it can. And so we're going to go into the differences between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Really quickly, we're going to go over some of the things that we might tell ourselves if we have a fixed mindset and what that might look like. So a fixed mindset, we'll be telling ourselves things such as, failure is the limit of my abilities. And this is a big one right here. I'm either good at it or I'm not. When I'm frustrated, I give up. I stick to what I know. My potential is predetermined. I can either do it or I can't. Feedback and criticism are personal, and I don't like to be challenged. I think many of us at one point or another have probably told ourselves that. I know when I was in school, I thought I was either good at something or I was bad at something. Let me know if that was something that you have told yourself too in the past. You know, I'm good at math and I'm bad at English. I'm good at art, but I'm bad at science, or, you know, whatever those subjects were. And I think at some point as students, we all told ourselves that we're either good at something or we're bad at something. And the interesting part about that is it's actually not true. We're either pursue it and we put time and energy and effort into it, and we can become good at those things. But if we have that fixed mindset, it can be really tough because we can convince ourselves that we're just not good at that thing. And language learning is one of those things that we convince ourselves that we're either good at something or we're bad at something. I'm either a language person or I'm not. If we do happen to have that kind of mindset to where we have convinced ourselves that I'm either good at something or I'm not, if I fail at something, that means I just can't do it. It's really challenging. I don't want to deal with it. But if we have that kind of mindset, we can actually change it. And that leads me to another quote that I really enjoy. And I got this quote from Unlimited Memory by Kevin Horsley. And it's actually a quote from Jim Rohn, but I'll go ahead and share that with you really quick. If you don't like how things are, change it. You're not a tree. And so many times we convince ourselves that, well, I am who I am. There's no change in me. I can't, if I'm not good at it, I'm just not going to be good at it. I'm not a math person. I will never be a math person, and I'm just never going to be good at math. How many of us have told ourselves that? But the interesting part about that is, if you don't like the way things are, and if you don't like your mindset, or if you don't like the fact that learning a language is tough, you can actually change that. And it's just a matter of doing that paradigm change and switching your mindset. So let's take a really quick look as far as what the other side of that coin looks like, what a growth mindset looks like. So a growth mindset, you'll be telling yourselves things such as, I can learn to do anything I want. My effort and attitude determine my abilities. I am inspired by the success of others. I like to try new things. Failure is an opportunity to grow. Feedback is constructive. Challenges help me grow. Very similar themes, but completely the opposite, right? And instead of convincing yourself that I can or I can't, you're convincing yourself that you can learn anything. And it really is true in practice. And many times it's just a mindset thing. And the way we view failure, sometimes we view failure as, oh, I failed at this thing, therefore I can't do it. Versus, I failed at this thing, oh, okay, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to grow and learn from it. Feedback too, if we had that fixed mindset, that feedback, we're going to take all that criticism personally and maybe even reject any of that feedback. However, if we have that growth mindset, we're going to view that feedback as constructive and helpful. And challenges, if we have that fixed mindset, we might be thinking, it's hard, so I'm just going to give up. But if we have that growth mindset, we're going to view those challenges and know that they're going to help us grow. I do want to share two quick quotes with you, which I thought were pretty inspiring. The first one is by Napoleon Hill. He says, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can also achieve. The reason why I like that quote so much is because, believing that we can do something is kind of the first step. And it might remind you of another quote from like Henry Ford where he says, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so whether or not we think we can do something or we truly believe that we can, that can actually be a measure of how successful we will actually be. And so telling ourselves and convincing ourselves that we can actually do this thing is going to be a predetermining factor whether or not we can. The other one I really enjoy is actually by Walt Disney. And let me know if you've heard this quote before. All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. I love a lot of quotes by Walt Disney, and that's a really powerful one. And we all have these dreams. And let's go ahead and adapt that to learning sign language really quick and say we all have the dream to learn sign language and to become fluent in sign language. But oftentimes we need to have the courage to pursue that dream. And so if we have that courage to, take the first steps and have the courage to fail and to have the courage to make those mistakes, those are going to be what propels us forward into actually achieving that dream of becoming fluent in sign language. And so, have that courage and, take the effort to go ahead and actively pursue learning. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the second one is methods. So we went over mindset. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun. The first one was mindset. So the second one we're going to talk about briefly is motivation. Oftentimes we compare language learning to a marathon, and many of us approach it as a sprint. But let's go ahead and think of that marathon for a little bit. And if you want to keep motivated to run that marathon, oftentimes it helps to have a running partner. And think of the energy that you have at the beginning of the race. And we have hundreds of runners, we have crowds cheering you on, and we're just waiting for that gun to go off. And so it fires off, everybody's running together as this big group, and everybody's cheering you on, and you have so much energy, you're so pumped. And that's a lot what it feels like when we first start learning sign language. We have all this energy, and we're running as fast as we can. But if we're doing that alone, now imagine that same scenario and you're by yourself. The roads are empty, there's no crowds, there's no one waiting to fire a gun. It's just you with this white stripe on the ground, and you have to tell yourself to start, and you have to tell yourself you need to finish 26 miles down the road. How hard is that going to be? How hard is that going to be to stay motivated when you don't have people cheering you on and you don't have a running partner to pick you up when you fall? Or to give you those words of encouragement when you're tired and you're out of breath and your feet hurt and you're only halfway through the race. Where's your running partner and to really keep you going? And so the first thing to really help us stay motivated is going to be having somebody to learn with. And it could be family, it could be our kids, it could be our friends. Staying motivated, it helps when we're running that race with other people. The second thing is that it can help us keep accountable and have like an accountability partner too. Not to make it stressful or anything like that, but maybe to make it fun. Say, hey, did you learn your 5 signs today? Hey, did you spend 10 minutes this morning like you said you were going to during your morning routine? And have that accountability partner and have that person that can cheer you on and have that person that can pick you up when you fall down. And running the race alone can really be a difficult race to run. So the more we can have people join us on that journey and join us on that marathon, the easier it's going to be to finish that race. A couple other things too is celebrate the small victories along the way. Again, picture that marathon and you have these mile markers, right? And you have mile marker 1, mile marker 2, and we have a lot of energy there. But let's say we get about halfway through that race and we're at mile marker 13, and man, I am tired and exhausted and I can't continue. My feet are killing me. I just want to drink water and go sit down on a couch. Right? You're halfway through that race and you have nothing left to give. Maybe we're convincing ourselves like, man, I still have so much. I'm only halfway there. I still have 13 more miles to go and I have nothing left to give. But if we're, spending the time to celebrate the small victories along the way, and every time you hit a mile marker, you're like, wow, man, I'm one step closer, literally one step closer to the finish line. And our language learning or the journey that we take on when we learn a new language can be a long race. And if we are constantly looking at the finish line and thinking of how far we have to go, it can be a really hard race to finish, and it's going to be demotivating. So to stay motivated, it's important to pause and think for a moment how much progress we have actually made. If we're at that 13 mile marker, are we telling ourselves, I got 13 more miles to go? Or are we telling ourselves, man, I am already halfway through this race, and you've celebrated 13 victories along the way, and you're keeping your motivation up so you can keep the momentum going, and so you can finish that race and finally become fluent in the language that you're trying to learn. So yeah, celebrate those small victories. And those small victories might be in the very beginning, I learned my alphabet and I can recall all the letters from memory. The next one might be, hey, I memorized 100 signs. This is great. The next one might be, I had a conversation with a deaf person and I didn't forget what I was able to communicate what I wanted to say. And so these small little victories, it's really important to pause, take a moment and celebrate those small victories. And that can give us the motivation to get to the next step and get to the next mile marker. So we can celebrate another small victory. One more thing is keeping the end in mind. To help us stay motivated to kind of win that race is we can really visualize what it's like to cross that finish line. So for the sake of learning sign language, really think about what it's going to be like when you're actually fluent in the language? What is it going to enable you to do? Are you going to be able to be a deaf advocate? Are you going to go into the field of interpreting? Do you feel like you're going to be able to be more supportive within the deaf community itself? Maybe you want to help out in your church. And so there's all these things that can be unlocked by reaching that end goal. And it's really important to remember what that end goal is. And it takes us back to day one too, right? The golden circle of why, how, and what. And we get to the center of it, and we're looking for that reason why, and to keep that in our mind's eye, and to really keep us focused moving forward and celebrate those small victories and take it one step at a time and really visualize what that end result is going to be like. And the more we keep that visual, the more motivated we're going to be able to stay, so we can keep running that race. Okay, so the last one is going to be our methodology, or the methods that we use to learn the language. And this is going to be taken from another one of my favorite books, The Motivated Brain. And in that book, they talk about Norman Webb's depth of knowledge. Rote memorization is surface learning. And this is a primary way that we teach in schools and how we learn sign language in classes. Rote memorization is basically, we repeat that sign over and over and over again until we can memorize it. But that's really the surface level. And so the Norman Webb's depth of knowledge has 4 levels. And rote memorization is number 1. It's super basic, it's temporary, it doesn't last, and it's just, you're memorizing facts, you're memorizing vocabulary, and it's really the least effective way of learning something. So let's go ahead and get past level 1. We want to get past rote memorization. It can be effective and it can be utilized, but it's not the deepest way of learning something. So let's go down to level 2 really quick. So level 2 is going to require some mental processing, and you're going to be interpreting information. So it's going to take a little more mental effort. So it's not just, this is the sign for A, B, C, but it's going to be require a little more process. So maybe you're looking at a sign, but they don't tell you what it is. So now you have to think about it, and you're maybe trying to interpret it, and maybe you're trying to figure it out through context. Maybe you watch it multiple times, and so you're putting a little more work and a little more effort into it. And that's going to be more effective than if I show you a sign, you repeat it back to me, and then you repeat that sign over and over and over again. So again, that's level 1, that's rote memorization. Level 2 is, it requires a little more work on your part. Whether it's learning vocabulary, or maybe you have to have this English sentence, and now you have to convert it and make it into ASL grammar. And so that requires a little more work, and that's actually going to be more effective, and you're going to remember that for a longer duration rather than you just memorizing it, right? So let's go down another level. Let's go down to level 3. So this is going to be requiring strategic thinking, and you're going to have to dig in and defend your answers with evidence and reason on it. And so this is going to be a multi-step process. It's not just going to be, here's the sign, memorize it. It's not going to be, here's a sentence, figure it out. It's going to be multiple steps. And so let's say you have to learn the sign for hippopotamus. And you could look that up on Google really quick, and maybe you'll see Bill Vickers do this, or maybe you'll see some other deaf individual do this. And so, you're trying to figure out and kind of seek the truth to something. And you're not just being fed the answers, you're having to actively do the research yourself and even defend yourself and say, these are my sources. And I've done all this research, and I've found this is to be the most accurate. This is to be the most truthful. And that is going to be the next level, right? And then the deepest level, level 4, is going to require a lot of research, work, and it's going to be done over a period of time. And this is the highest level of learning that we can really achieve. And so this goes beyond vocabulary, and it really starts to tie into both our creativity and our endurance. So, like language learning, as far as deciphering lots of different content. And we've talked about comprehensible input before. So when we were exposing ourselves to tons of input, and so over a long period of time. So this isn't just I'm going to binge watch a bunch of sign language videos in a day. This is going to be a process, a set process that requires a long period of time. And so maybe you're watching videos every day, or maybe you're having to put in personal research and you have to be more autodidactic or a self-learner. I gave a workshop recently, and this is again is from the book Unlimited Memory by Kevin Horsley. And he has tons of different memory hacks that we can implement in order to like remember the things that we learn. And one of the things is to be really creative with the process. Let's see if I can do this really quick. So like the first 10 elements of the periodic table is one of the examples that he gave. Level 1 would be me telling you, okay, memorize these 10 things. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, and neon. Okay, so you're going to take those 10 elements and you're going to repeat them, and you're going to commit them to memory. You're going to use rote memorization and just recall that information. And you might be able to do that. You might repeat that 10 or 15 times until it sticks. But it's going to be really temporary. But if you can make that really creative and you put a lot of work into it and research into it, that's going to stick a lot better. And so in the book, he has this picture that he came up with, and he basically like copied and pasted various images to help him remember what element was pictured. So just going through the picture that he came up with. He had a fire hydrant, he had a helium balloon, he had a light bulb picturing lithium, he had a pile of berries, he had a boar eating those berries, and then he had a car with a bun sitting in the driver's seat, which pictured carbon. There was a knight in shining armor in the passenger seat, and he's got that pictured nitrogen. He had an oxygen tank strapped to his back, and that oxygen tank had a tube that went to a woman that had the flu, which pictured fluorine. And then in the background of all this was a neon sign. You're basically creating this visual element, and you're engaging your creative process, and you're hitting all those different levels along the way. And you're memorizing it, but you're also it's requiring mental processing. It's requiring a multi-step process to where you're thinking about each one. You're thinking of how you can visualize it, and then you take the visual image, and then you're piecing it together, and you're mind mapping these things. And so that's going to stick in your memory a lot better because you had to really put some work into it. And so if we want to reach that highest level of learning as far as sign language, it just means that we have to put some work into it and be creative with the process. And it can be simple things too, like if you're having a hard time remembering how to sign go, I've had some students say, oh, well, it kind of looks like a squid, and the squid goes away. And so, it's a good mental picture, and you can do that with lots of different signs to kind of help you remember the signs that you have been learning. So what we want to do is we want to combine all those three aspects, and that can really take our learning to the next level. So we make sure that we have that growth mindset, and make sure that we can stay motivated in the long run, and make sure that we can unlock a higher level of learning by improving our methodology, by approaching the language. So by doing those three things, we're going to become fluent much faster, and it's going to be a much more fun and engaging process along the way.